Hello everyone, my name is Kelly Bodner and I'm a Cobb County Science District coach. Today we're going to do a 5th grade lesson about electricity. Before we get started, I want you to think about electricity. I want you to name all the different things that you can think of in your house that require electricity. I'll give you a few moments to think about it. What kind of things did you think of that use electricity in your home? I thought about my stove, my refrigerator, my dryer. I even thought about my hair dryer, my flat iron. Maybe you thought about your Xbox, your PlayStation, or your phone charger. There are many things that use electricity in your house. Today, let's look at what our learning targets are going to be. The 2 learning targets are what are the necessary components I need to make a simple circuit, and what are the common materials that determine insulators and conductors of electricity. I want to welcome everybody. This is Bradley Jones from Cobb EMC, and Bradley's going to answer some questions for us about electricity. Bradley, first question I have for you is, what is your job at Cobb EMC?
Okay, so at Cobb EMC, I'm the Skills Development Coordinator. I oversee and train all of our apprentices in our apprenticeship program. Just to make sure that we meet the needs for all of our apprentices to keep a good, healthy staff so we can provide power.
Nice. Sounds like you have a very important job. I have a science question for you. One of our 5th grade science standards that we have to know the difference between an insulator and a conductor. Can you help us out and tell us the difference between insulators and conductors?
Okay, so insulators, they don't readily conduct. Conductors are materials or devices that energy can easily flow through or across. Would you like to see some examples of those?
That would be great.
So as far as a insulator, this is a line hose. This is a blanket. We cover the lines with those to keep us protected while we're working. These are our rubber sleeves and our rubber gloves that we use on a daily basis to keep us protected while we're working. As far as good insulators, rubber, fiberglass, glass itself, porcelain, those are all good insulators. And to the conductors, this is aluminum. This is what feeds probably 50% of y'all's houses. Inside of this is probably another 50%. This is aluminum and copper. There's 2 conductors inside there. That's what feeds all of our underground subdivisions. And then all of these are conductors that we use across our system. There's copper, aluminum, copper and aluminum in these. Most metals, all metals are good conductors.
So how important is it that you guys use insulators on your job?
So without insulators, without insulators, power could not flow. The principle behind it would not work. The line hoses, the blankets, the rubber gloves, the sleeves, without those, we could not work on the power lines. We would always have to kill the power, and that's a big inconvenience.
So I have another science question for you. Okay. Now that we know some about insulators and conductors, and thank you for giving us some examples of those, how is it that you make a simple circuit for electricity to flow through?
Okay, so a circuit requires an energy source. It's going to require wires, which would be your conductor. It's going to require some type of a switch and some type of load, which light bulb is probably the most common that everyone will be familiar with.
Wow. So thank you, Bradley. So I have another question for you. Electricity is definitely something that we have to be safe around. And I know that you mentioned that you guys have to be safe in the trainings that you do. So what are some things that or some ways that students need to be safe around electricity?
Well, I would say the biggest thing is always treat any electrical line as it's energized.
Okay.
If you see something that looks like a hazard, a down line, let your parent know, let an adult know. If nobody's around, call 911. Never touch any line that's down. Treat everything like it is an electrical line. A lot of times you see a phone line going across the driveway. Still touch it, you never know.
And I know that at bus stops, I see students on those big green boxes. Can you tell us about those boxes that they jump on and stand on and play on?
So those big green boxes are underground transformers. There's on our system, there's 7,200 volts going through those.
Wow.
If there was a fault inside that transformer while they were setting on it, it wouldn't be good. So it's best that we have stickers on them to stay away, do not touch. It's best just to don't touch them.
I agree.
Would you like to see one? I have one in here.
Yes, that'd be great, so that we can get an idea of what it looks like and that we need to stay off of.
Okay, so the door is off of this one, just for demonstration purposes, but can you, let's see if I roll this out. Can you see through the plexiglass or through that window?
Yes, we can see through there.
Okay, so those are conductors going through there, and it will be oil filled. Oil is another insulator. Also helps things cool. If any of those straps broke, which are the conductors, and touch the metal on the side, that would take that voltage straight to the outside of this transformer. It's a very uncommon thing. It can happen, but it's a good reason to stay off of it.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you. So how do you actually train people to work in this career field that you're in?
So most of our training is on the job. It's just like anything else. They'll come through, say, a class with me. We give them the building blocks. You start with your basics. You just learn the basics. You learn what it is, then you learn what it does and how to use it. There's no replacement for experience. So we have a 7-year apprenticeship, and within 7 years, you're not going to see everything, but you're going to see a lot, and you'll learn how to use your resources to stay safe and to complete your task.
Thank you. And then what's some ongoing training that's necessary then for the employees to stay safe and to also learn about electricity?
So the electrical industry is just like the rest of the world. It's always growing, always new, innovative ideas, equipment. So with new trucks, we'll have continuing education going on with, say, if we get a new truck that operates different, we may bring a sales rep in, a manufacturer in. They'll give a class over the new equipment. We have a lot of very smart devices going up on our system. The guys that have been here for 20 and 25 years, they need classes on those. So we go over the material as to how they operate, their functions, and what's needed to build them.
So continuing education is something that's very important, even, in your field and all fields, that are sort of out there for careers. So thank you for that. Once again, boys and girls, I'd like to thank Bradley for his time at Cobb EMC and teaching us about electricity and how to stay safe about electricity. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to watch a video called Watson's Electric Avenue Demonstration. And it's going to be about electrical safety. And you're going to see my friend, Beth McMillan. And what she's going to do is show you again some different conductors and insulators and show you some of the things that Bradley was talking about. So stay tuned and watch that video.
Hi, I'm Beth McMillan and I work for COB-EMC, your local electric distribution co-op. And today I want to talk to you a little bit about electric safety using the Electric Avenue display. But before I can get started with Electric Avenue, I have to first put on my safety gear. As you can see, I'm wearing a flame-resistant coat, which if the electricity did spark and start a fire, I would be protected. I also, and this is the big one, I'm also wearing some rubber gloves. And you'll actually see that I have two pairs of gloves on here. I have a bottom pair of rubber gloves, which insulate me from electricity. They're an insulator, which means that electricity cannot travel easily through them. On top of them, though, you might wonder why I'm wearing leather gloves. And that's because if there's even the tiniest pinprick of a hole in these rubber gloves, I can still get shocked. So that's the only thing the leather gloves are here for, is to protect the rubber gloves. I also have my safety goggles to protect my eyes. And as you can tell, I've tied back my hair because ladies like myself, if we're bending over the display and my hair comes into contact with the power lines, then I can get shocked. You'll also see me using this hot stick. And this is a smaller version of what our linemen use in the field. Just an added precaution, another length of space between you and that electricity. There are a few definitions I want to give you before we get started. First, energized. Later, when I turn on Electric Avenue, there will be live electricity flowing through the wires, and they will then be energized with live electricity. I also will say voltage several times, and when I talk about voltage, it's really the pressure that pushes electricity through the wire. And the main thing I want you to remember about that is that the more high the voltage, the more intense the shock. So the higher that number goes, the more of a shock you're going to feel. For instance, in your homes and schools and businesses, those outlets in the wall, there's about 120 volts of electricity coming through those. But out on the power lines you see running down the street, there's about 7,200 volts there. And actually, the majority of deaths and injuries that occur, about 30,000 a year in the U.S. due to electric shock, the majority of those happen in the home at that 120 volts. So just because electricity is around us every day, we do want to remember to stay safe. There are three principles I want you to keep in mind while I go through the display. First, electricity is always trying to get to the ground. Second, electricity moves at the speed of light, meaning you can't outrun it. And third, that electricity will always take the path of least resistance, meaning that it will always take the shortest route to get to the ground. And that's why you can sometimes see birds sitting on a power line and they don't get shocked. That's because it would be out of the way for the electricity to travel through the line, up through the bird, back into the line, than it would be for it just to keep on traveling right through that line. And with that, let's get started with Electric Avenue. All right, I have turned the display on. Can you tell? If you have a really sharp eye, you might see that there's a little red light on the side of this house here, and we put that there to let you know that these lines are now energized. However, if that light wasn't there, you would have no idea that this electricity is running. And the moral from that is that electricity is invisible. You don't know if it's there or not, so always assume that it is. If you were here, you could hear a low hum coming from these power lines, and you may sometimes even hear that outside with the real power lines. But other than that, there's no way to tell that the electricity is flowing. Let me now introduce our cast of characters. We have Miss Smith here, who's flying a kite, and we have her two good friends, Susie and Bobby, who she's taken around the neighborhood. It's a beautiful sunny day, so they decide they're going to fly a kite. You may remember a guy with a kite who discovered electricity. Our good friend Benjamin Franklin discovered electricity with his kite and key experiment in 1752, so you might be able to see where this is going. Mrs. Smith, as she's flying her kite, she gets a little too close to these power lines, and I'll show you what happens. You can see that electricity jump. We call that arcing, when electricity jumps from the wire to another object. So you can see her kite doesn't even have to touch the power line for her to get shocked. And remember, one of the main principles that I was telling you about electricity is it always tries to get to the ground. So if you look closely at Mrs. Smith's feet, you can see that electricity traveling all the way through her straight to the ground. And Mrs. Smith is actually a really great conductor. You heard me mention an insulator before with my rubber gloves. They protect me from electricity. Electricity can't travel through them. A conductor is the exact opposite. Electricity travels very easily through certain things, including water, which, if you'll remember, humans are made up almost entirely of water, 70% water, so we as humans are really great conductors. So Mrs. Smith has had quite a shock. We're going to send her to the hospital now. In a very similar situation would be trees growing near power lines. So you can see this tree is growing a little too close to that power line, making it real easy for the electricity to jump, just like it did with Mrs. Smith. And remember that that electricity is traveling all the way down that tree through the ground. So this child up in the tree, as well as this child just touching the trunk at the bottom, are both getting shocked by that electricity. If you do ever see trees growing up too near the power line, Cobby MC has a whole forestry department dedicated to making sure that trees aren't too near our lines. So give us a call and we'll trim those back for you. All right, let's get back to Bobby and Susie. They're still wandering around for the weekend. Something else has caught their attention. They see this green box in the yard. And you've probably seen a green box like this. They're very common in neighborhoods. What that green box indicates, it's an underground transformer. And it means that the power lines have been buried in that area. And so it's just like the power lines you see running down the street, except that they're underground. So the same energy that would be traveling through this canister, this transformer, is traveling through this transformer as well. And basically what a transformer does is it takes a higher voltage, a higher power of electricity, and transform it down to a lower voltage. So these are transforming from that 7,200 volts on the lines to the 120 volts that come into your home. There's a lot of electric equipment in there. There's even oil to cool down that equipment. So you want to stay away from these as much as you can. I know some people use them for home base for tag or sit on them to warm up at the bus stop, but you really want to stay away, especially if you see one that's open or damaged. Tell an adult right away so they can tell us at Cobby MC and we'll get that fixed. But Bobby is just too curious, so Bobby walks in here and has to see what's going on with this transformer. You can see how far and how loud that electricity gets. Can really give him quite a shock. So we're going to take him away from there, close that back up. We like those to be nice and closed and secure. And since our friends here are plastic, they're going to keep trudging ahead and showing you some more examples. So they stumble upon this substation. And a substation is very similar to the transformer in that it takes higher voltages of electricity and transforms it down to lower voltages. When electricity is created, is generated in a power plant, it has to travel a very long distance to get to you and your home to give you power. And to be able to travel that far, the pressure that pushes it through that wire, the voltage, has to be very high. So, we talked about 7,200 volts on these lines. The high power transmission lines that feed into substations can have hundreds of thousands of volts going through those. So there's a reason they put up these fences that say danger high voltage. You want to stay out of these types of areas because they can be very, very dangerous. But somehow, Bobby's hopped the fence, or the fence has been broken. He's gotten in here to this substation. And once again, he gets a pretty bad shock. You see that jumping again, arcing away from the substation. And this shock, while any shock can be very injurious and very deadly, it can be very much more intense at a substation because those voltages are much, much higher. So Bobby's in a lot more danger here in this substation than he was even at that transformer. But we're going to close this substation back up because the weekend is over and Bobby and Susie have to go back to school, sadly enough. And it's not as beautiful as it was over the weekend. It's storming, it's raining, it's thundering. And as Bobby's riding the bus, all of a sudden the storm causes a power line to fall right on his bus, which is a pretty terrifying situation. And if you were in that situation, you would probably think, oh my goodness, get me out of here as fast as possible. But actually, the safest thing to do is to stay right there on the bus, because there are 4 big round things on the bottom there, those wheels, those tires, that are going to insulate Bobby from the electricity flowing on the bus. And so if he stays on there, he should be fine until emergency crews arrive. Even if the line falls down, not on your vehicle, but near your vehicle on the road, you can see that energized wire can cause electricity to travel all around on the road there. So even if the wire is not on your vehicle itself, you still want to stay in there with those insulated wheels until crews arrive. And that's all the demonstrations that I have for you today. And we have been through a lot of high voltage situations, but remember, as I said before, the majority of incidents and injuries with electricity occur in the home at that 120 volt level. So if you ever do get in a dangerous situation, I hope that you'll remember what you learned here and protect yourself. Remember, aware plus prepare equals safety.
Now it's time for you to do an activity. Pick any two of the following activities to do. You can draw and label the components of a simple circuit, create a T-chart and identify the materials that make good insulators and good conductors, write a paragraph that's 5 to 7 sentences about electrical safety, conduct the Cobb EMC home electrical safety inspection with an adult, or write a letter in letter format to Bradley Jones about 3 things that you learned from his interview or from his video. Here is the home electrical safety inspection. Make sure for your safety that you do this with an adult, and you can find this on the Cobb EMC webpage. Thanks for joining me today. Hopefully you learned a lot about electricity and electrical safety. When you do the activities, please tweet out any of the pictures or videos of you doing the activities at Cobb Science. Hopefully you have a great day. Remember, stay safe. Goodbye.